Kaisoko Tenshi, the Rapid Angel, is exactly what comes to mind when you think of budget beat-em-ups and import gaming at its finest. It's a quick-paced, occasionally clunky brawler that, while not even remotely close to being refined like its contemporary, it instead provides you with the Friday night pizza and late night anime feel you might be craving in game form. Well, sadly, the game is one of the many completely untranslated games out there, with the translation seemingly vanishing from most sites hosting it. The story is really simple. Three girls work for a delivery company titled Rapid Angel. After one of their deliveries goes awry, however, the three of them, along with their boss, her cat, and a mysterious hired goon, all make their way across the land trying to retrieve the stolen letter. If you know Japanese fully, or at least can find a translation guide online, you will absolutely get the most out of the character moments, comedy, and all the multiple choices of dialogue that is presented throughout the story. Not that it really does all that much, though. If you don't, then there is no need to worry, as while the story is there, the gameplay is most certainly what you are here for. There is a decent cast of characters here, the main three girls being Natsumi, the kind-hearted brawler, Ayan, the snarky swordswoman, and Haruna, the silly and light-hearted shrine maiden. Joining them from the shadows is their dominatrix boss by the name of Dolsh, her familiar cat companion, and a mysterious ukulele-strumming yellow-bedecked merc. Each member has their own personality through the visual novel-styled cutscenes, and the villains, while not given as much time or presence, do at least have some nice character as well through the dialogue and sprite work before and after fights. Something I really enjoyed was, if you played the girls in order, their story would evolve and change with each character that came after, unraveling a bit more of the story each time, along with the fact that the girls would show up in the following character scenario. While the overall flow was the same for the main three girls, their endings and some of their encounters were each unique. Dolsh, the girl's boss, actually had the most unique scenario with differing level structures, layouts, and position in the story. The swordsman only gets to run through Natsumi's scenario without any of the story progression, making him good for power fantasy speedruns. The game is a brawler first and foremost, with a heavy emphasis on boss battles and a surprising amount of platforming as well. Despite this being set in the beat-em-up genre, outside the boss battles, you can actually bypass every single fight in the game by just sprinting and platforming your way past them. There are also occasional one-and-done puzzles, such as finding your way through a simple maze cave or unlocking doors and elevators in a manor. There was also the inclusion of an odd two-player mode that sadly I was unable to play due to not having anyone to try it with. The fighting itself is very simple and lacking any major depth, but I oddly found myself comparing each of the characters to the gameplay of the Devil May Cry series, specifically Devil May Cry 3. Each girl and guy has their own moveset, with only two of the characters actually getting their own screen-clearing special moves. The main three girls all share a special, but thankfully make up for it with their varied movesets. Natsumi has heavy fist blows that can land combos and has a decent damage output, but minimal range, making her a good starting character. She was probably my second favorite character to play outside the hired swordsman. Ayan was the sword master, with a quick blade and slightly better damage than Natsumi. My one major issue with her was the fact that she had to stand in place when striking with her blade. Haruna was the major range character of the game, focusing on mobility and surprisingly a block and parry mechanic that caused me to think right back to the Royal Guard set that Dante had at his disposal. Her shield takes time to charge, but if you time it just right, it negates enemy attacks, and it can even damage close by baddies. The one issue with her is her damage numbers are atrocious, and you have to be precise with her shots, and her special moves are quite literally useless unless you plan on mastering her playstyle. After beating the game, you unlock both Dolsh and the swordsman. Dolsh had both melee and ranged attacks, and a higher damage set than any of the three main girls. While she wasn't my favorite character to play, I adored her unique animations and design the most out of the entire cast. My favorite character to play had to be the over-the-top sword-wielding mercenary that has insane amounts of damage that he can deal, and while he has Ayan's problem of being forced to stay put while he was attacking, his ranged laser is insanely fun to use, and he is just a blast to romp around with due to his overpowered status. Scattered around the levels are health pickups, special attack tokens, occasional one-use items like headlamps or pickaxes, and plenty of different treasure that does nothing but add to your overall score. I was slightly sad to see that there wasn't any upgrades, major power-ups, or stores in the game, but this in reality kept the game fast-paced and allowed it to not get bogged down. The difficulty for the game was surprisingly pleasant. There was a fair bit of challenge here, both in terms of wonky hit detection and just decent design for the fights, but the fact that if you fell into a hole, you would only lose a little bit of health and be sent back to the previous platform, and the fact that if you game overed, all that would happen is you'd be forced to restart the stage with full life and special attacks, that was a breath of fresh, kind air compared to other more sadistic beat-em-ups in the genre. Also, the time limit is a joke, as most of the levels can be completed before even a quarter of it has run down. The enemies vary from level to level, with the only constant being the fatigue-wearing soldiers for the majority of the game. Rogue farmers, mechas, ninjas, zombies, fire elementals, and so much more overfilled the roster, and the massive amount of differing and visually fun bosses were nice, since only a couple of them were reused with new moves each time you encountered them again. Visually, the game is alright. I personally find it really charming and adore the budget and sincere visuals the game has, but it definitely has a cheapness that might turn people off. The opening cutscene, the only true one in the game, is a fun OP, the visual novel segments and such were nice, and all the varied sprite work, surprisingly, even at their small size, conveyed decent emotion to what was going on. Each of the characters were unique and pleasant to look at, and I'm glad that the enemies unique to their elemental stage weren't reused later on randomly, and the bosses all put a fun spin on things you have seen before. Although, the battle with the maids and the nun in the manor were especially great, since it's always fun to see those two showcased as badasses. The levels also had a lot of character for the most part, with quiet villages, creepy caves, sprawling towns, and caverns filled with lava, and while there are a few drab environments such as the seaside, those are overshadowed by more good than bad. There is also a fun amount of background details that you will discover if you actually slow down and take your time to look around. While yes, the PSX graphics are a bit chunky and rigid, the worst part of this version of the game, the one supplied on the PS3 storefront, is the fact that the emulation of this official copy, mind you, is completely broken. Throughout my entire playtime, character sprites were turned completely gray, as with their hitbox due to rendering errors with the emulator, and some characters broke later on after working at the beginning. Other than that, the colors are nice, the game runs well, and I could tell what everything was outside of when the visuals broke. I should also bring up now that if you see some inconsistency with how clear or murky the visuals look, that isn't the game. The more crisp footage is after I realized that the PSX emulator on the PS3 had smoothing on for some reason, and I turned that garbage off the second I realized my error and accidentally leaving it on. The sound for the most part is good, although half the time the mic quality for a lot of the voice acting was oddly grainy and crackly.
あやねはだだこねてばっかだし。春菜は好きあらば、社のカーテンに変な刺繍しようと狙ってるし。もう、カリン社長、助けて!
While other times being quite clear.
現在、フレー期間の市場を独占している。
混合重工?
そう考えるのが自然ね。
Some of the voice acting did verge into typical moe whines and shrill shrieks, but it maintained that 90s OVA charm that older voice acting has. While I'm no expert in critiquing Japanese voice acting, everyone sounded the part, at least in my eyes and ears, and the snarky, shrillish, smug laughs from my aunt always got a chuckle out of me.
今日は雪ね。
The music was all fantastic, every track really suiting each of the stages, and it made me bob my head along to them.
今日は寝坊したから。カリン社長特製中華クレープ弁当もらってくるの忘れちゃった。さあ、気を取りな。
The sound effects were sadly a bit lacking, but not bad thankfully. They were just nothing new or original. It was all the same punches, kicks, and breaking that you've all heard a billion times before. And with all that said, the Rapid Angel may not be the prettiest, well-made, or amazing beat-em-up out there, but it has a whole lot of heart and you can feel that while playing. The game is a lot of fun and offers lots of content on repeat playthroughs with each character. With over an hour for each scenario, you more than make up the cost of the game and the time you spend on it. Outside the odd hiccup from the game itself and the atrocious emulation, and the fact that the game is completely untranslated, it's a fantastically fun, budget-filled time, and you shouldn't let any of the occasional bad hinder you from enjoying this quirky hidden gem of late-night goodness. As always, if you want to help support the channel, please consider sharing the video with a friend or checking out my Patreon linked in the description below. A big thank you to my wonderful friend Orion Knight for drawing up these wonderful animation stills of Punish Neat. If you have any comments, questions, or recommendations, leave them in the comments as I read and reply to everything. Until next time, this is Thierry Williamson signing off until the next video. See ya guys!